We've become more so in later years because we've been travelling the world to conventions, meeting fans, and it's taken us to so many places, and we've met so many interesting people. So we've become Star Wars fans later in life, because when I finished Star Wars, I spent years just going from film to film. I mean, 10 Bond movies alone. So I didn't really give Star Wars too much thought, and I didn't use the fact that I did Darth Vader and the Stormtroopers and other characters as a way of getting future work. I just had a reputation for being able to do the work, and I just went from film to film. So it wasn't a matter of being a fan at that time, but yes, we've become fans later in life. As I say, at the time I was on the picture, it was just another job. I went on there, didn't really know what I was going to. I was told when I went on it that there was some strange characters to do. Little did I know that what those characters would become years down the road. But for me, having done that work all those years ago, and for what it's brought us in later in life, I feel very proud that I actually did that work. I didn't realise at that time just how big it would get, because the crew were very pessimistic on the working on the picture, and it wasn't until, because I started at the beginning of January 1976, and it was in summer '77 that we went to the crew showing up in London. So that's before it ever got big. But when this same pessimistic crew saw the film, were amazed by it, and at the end of the film it got a standing ovation. And it's only all the films I've done on all the crew showings I've been up to, I've never seen that before. People call me that. I did Darth Vader, all of it, the helmet, the mask, the chest armour, shoulder bells and the shins. I did the Stormtrooper armour. I did all the finishing work on C-3PO after Liz had done all the clay sculpting. I did CZ3, the helmet, and I did the Death Star droid, the helmet. So when Liz left, I had to do all the finishing work on C-3PO. They created it in plaster, and then I carved all the plaster sections up to sharpen everything up so it looked really sharp in the fiberglass. I also carved the slots in at the back of the head, and as a last minute thing they asked me to do the hands, and they didn't even have time to mould Tony Daniel's hands, so they got him to come to me one lunch hour. He put his hand in gloves, and I had to sculpt the detail on the back of his hands over 1 hour, slide the gloves off, finish them a little bit more, and they moulded that, and that was it. So the hands were a last minute thing, and they were actually re-sculpted on Empire Strikes Back. The fans all around the world have been so respectful. More and more people like the work that was done behind the scenes, to the point where even with films now they're showing Blu-ray or DVDs with people from behind the scenes talking on them. So people more and more appreciate the work that was done by the talented crew behind the, in the background as such. I'll tell you what, I did a convention out in Ireland, in Dublin, and they set us up to do a quiz. People that had been on Star Wars and behind the scenes, and the kids, about probably 10 kids, and there was 10 of us. There was a quiz, and the kids beat us hands down. Because we were on the film, but they've watched the film so many times, they know all the ins and outs, of the story, the backstory for characters, and so yeah, we lost. The kids beat us. So the kids are well and truly into Star Wars, and there are new fans every day, even with the new films. Some of them obviously might prefer the new films because it's their time, but guys that are from probably 35 to 60, it's the old trilogy that they love. Funny enough, a lot of the fans in China were girls, were young ladies, who were real fans, incredible so. Japan especially, where you put your arm around them for a photograph and you can feel them, they're just shaking. And I can't believe that they can feel like that. You've got the 501st garrisons all around the world. I mean, they're amazing people. We get taken out to dinner and they're always very respectful, so it's great. We've met Albin Johnson a few times that created the 501st, and it's built to a huge size. It's worldwide now. Even in China, when we went to China, we were surprised how big it was. And apparently they'd only had Star Wars for 5 years. We get to travel and meet lovely people. And I get to see my creations at many a convention. A lot of the Vaders you see, some are fan-made, some are licensed people like Ruby's, which, you know, their Vader's not great, but it's good enough to troop in. If it's got, it goes back to the original, because you get some that are moulded and then moulded again and moulded again. So they've got links back to the original, and I can put my thumb in them and I know that it's going to fit perfectly. Whereas I said about the Rubies, which is a licensed one, it's a narrow nose and my thumb won't go in that. And you get stormtroopers to varying standards. I mean, the best we see are the RS prop, because that is from an original, and they're the only ones in the world that do their armour from an original, so it is the best without a doubt. But again, it's great to see them all. It didn't mean much to them as kids so much, and the once or twice they'd told kids at school that their dad did Darth Vader, they wouldn't believe them. They never would believe them. And funny enough, it's later in life that they've become to appreciate what I did all those years ago more and more. And the grandsons we have, they're into Star Wars. But our youngest son, he said the best chat up line when he was chatting up girls down the pub or whatever was, "My dad did Darth Vader." And he knew with that, he was in, he was going to do all right. 2007, where I went up to the High Court for Lucas. I mean, it was proved then that I did all the Stormtrooper armour, but unfortunately Liz didn't get the credit for doing the helmet. They gave it to a guy called Pemberton, who did a terrible version concept that they wouldn't use, and that's when they gave Liz the job of doing the Stormtrooper. We spent years fighting for her, and the last thing we did in lockdown, we said, right, we're going to write the book. And we wrote the book, Stormtroopers, The True Story, which you've probably seen. So she's pretty much known as having done the Stormtrooper helmet now. So it was a joint job, and in the book we show everyone that was involved, from George Lucas down to even the plasterers that did all the moulding and set the moulds up for the vacuum forming, which was sent out to Ainsworth, and that's where all the problems started all those years later, really. I just feel a very ordinary guy that happened to have the ability to sculpt, and was lucky enough to be on all these film productions. So for me, it's at the end of my life sort of thing. I've realised that so many people appreciate the work that I did on all the films, but mainly we hear about, you know, the love for Star Wars and for the work I did on that.